Alright, man, so as requested by some of you guys on one of my previous videos on this channel talking about the differences between a spiritual awakening and true self-realization, today we're going to be talking about what an ego death experience really feels like. So without further ado, let's break this bitch down real quick like a brick for y'all. So to start things off, let's talk about what the ego really is in simple terms. So the ego, and in my point of view, in my experience, in my philosophy, come on, man, is the part of you, it's a false perception of you, a false perception of what you are. It's a false idea of who this being really is. And it's a false perception because it identifies itself with things that are impermanent, with things like the mind, with things like the body, with things like your height, your weight, your race, your ethnicity, your status in the world economically, your friend group, your environment. It just identifies with all those things, and it essentially creates a persona, personality, and a perception of what you are that affects the world around you. Because as we know, when it comes to the spiritual path, everything is a reflection of the inside, of the inner world. Your physical world is simply just what you perceive it as from your inner gates, from your eyes, from your consciousness, from all the things that are within. It's not where, to the point where the physical world is exactly the same for everybody. It's completely different for me, it's completely different for you, it's completely different for everybody else. And how is that? It's because of our inner world that shifts the perspective, that molds the perspective to whatever we identify as. And the ego is the biggest driver of that, in my opinion. So when you have an ego death experience, what you're doing is ripping that perception off of you like a band-aid. And it's just all at once, depending on how you do it, depending on what you did to get to that point. Obviously mine was with a psychedelic experience, maybe yours was with a traumatic experience, maybe yours was with a euphoric experience, maybe yours was with a deep meditation experience. It does not matter. There's no set rules to get to an ego death experience, and you can't like makeshift it. You can't like force it to happen. It just happens. You can't go into a meditation session and be like, today I'm gonna have an ego death experience. It don't fucking work like that, bro. It does not work like that. And the reason it doesn't work like that is because the ego is always working 24/7, 365 days a year to stay in charge of your beingness, to stay in charge of your consciousness. Because evolutionary wise, the ego protects you, and not only does it protect you, but it separates you from everything else. That's what it is. It individualizes you, sometimes in a bad way, sometimes in a good way. Most of the time, when it gets too over controlling, that's where it gets bad. That's where you get egotistical narcissists that I think the whole world revolves around them, when in reality they're nothing but a little speck of dust within this entire cosmic game. But depending on how strong your ego is, when you have an ego death, it will shake your whole perspective on what life is, on what this experience is. Because it doesn't just have to do with your an ego you might think is just like my personality, my individuality, my view on myself. No, it's actually your view on the entire world. So things like the ego latches onto things that are stable, like time, like numbers, like all these man-made concepts that help you stay sane, basically, when we're going on throughout this life. And it's more of a masculine, logical point of view when you use these type of things. When it comes to, hey, get out of there, Lola. My bad. When it comes to these types of concepts and these analytics and all these different measurements of life that we use to make sure everything is in order, in line. And in reality, The world doesn't work like that. The world is not linear. It's not ABC. It's a whole myriad of things that are going on at the same time, that are going from left to right, up to down, back and forth. Like, we don't know what's going on really, but we as humans try to make it linear, so to the best of our abilities we can control things. When the ego finally lets go of that, that's when you experience more of the world from a universal perspective instead of just your own individualized perspective. Let me say that again. When your ego death experience happens, when the ego lets go of control, you get to view things and you get to view the world from a universal perspective instead of your own individualized perspective. And what that does to you is one or two things. Either it's gonna send you into a state of psychosis because your ego is so strong and it finally got rocked, it finally got knocked out, and you're just like laying there on the floor and you're unconscious and you don't know how to act when you get back into your sober state or into your ego state, because an ego death experience is not forever. It doesn't last forever, and it shouldn't, because you cannot operate in the world in an ego death experience. You're just going to be one with everything, one with nature, one with the trees, one with the plants, one with everybody else. And that's going to make things like survival for your organism hard to do. That's why the ego was an evolutionary trait psychologically to help us keep surviving. It's just there for a reason, but we'll get onto that later about how you can use it to your advantage and not let it take over your life. But you're either going to go through psychosis or you're going to go through an awakening experience, if you want to call it that. Like I said before on this channel, how I got this topic because you guys requested it, talking about what happens during a spiritual awakening, what's the difference between a spiritual awakening, self-realization. Make sure you go run it up if you haven't already after this. But it's either you're gonna go to psychosis or spiritual awakening, and I do plan to make a video later on this channel talking about how to know if you're actually having psychosis or was it a spiritual awakening. Were you hallucinating, or was this a holistic experience to actually transform yourself for the better? Because a lot of people don't know the difference. A lot of people go off the end on each way. Some people go on the right path and they go on the spiritual path and they have an awakening and everything's good. Some people crash out, burn out, fry out like a fucking eggs on a skillet, bro. Like eggs on a fucking stainless steel pan. They are fried, deep fried. So those are two main things that are gonna happen. And then when you get out of the experience, you're gonna have essentially a kind of battle with the ego still, because you know that what you experienced was life without the ego, was a perspective without the ego. And some of you guys may enjoy that and some of you guys may hate that. Some people who hate that, who have a psychosis, who have trouble integrating the principles and the lessons and teachings from that ego death experience, they're gonna run further to the ego and close the door shut of whatever they experience, while other people will leave the door open. Their ego is still gonna be there, but they're gonna have that side of them that they understood that, hey bro, this isn't everything that's there. This isn't the ultimatum. This isn't the absolute. There's something more to life that I experienced. What is it? We got to figure it out. That's why you get on the path of self-realization, to understand what it was. Because me personally, when I had my ego death experience, I was like, what the fuck did I experience? What was that? How do I do that? What caused that? What the fuck went on in my head? Am I hallucinating? Do I have psychosis? What the fuck was that? Because let's talk about some examples of like how it really shifted my perspectives. Because during the experience, like I talked about before on this channel, on one of my videos, describing the differences between shrooms and acid, because my ego death experience was off psychedelics, 5 grams of shrooms. And in that video, I talked about how not only did I start the way I gotta try to explain this is so like bizarre maybe to you guys, because I'm trying to explain things that can't be put into words. So if you think I'm going crazy right now or I'm off drugs. I am not. I am fully sober. I promise you. Just stick with me. Essentially, during the ego death experience, my sense of self, my identity, my personality started to dissolve. And what psychedelics do, like I've talked about before on that video, is dissolve the barrier between you, like the physical world, the you that you think you are, and the spiritual world. That's why a lot of people can get put into trance states off psychedelics, or they see things that aren't quote unquote there with their physical eyes, with their normal 5 physical senses, but they awaken their spiritual senses. So intuitions can come in, universal downloads can come in. You can see through the veil of Maya, the illusion, the whatever you want to call it, the false perception of reality. You get to see through that, and there's things that are always there, but you can't perceive them because now with your heightened spiritual senses, you're able to be aware of them. So during that experience, like my whole perception of Ali Fuladi, of I'm this age, I look like this, I grew up here, I'm this years old, I'm like this height, I went to this school, I went to all that stuff was slowly but surely crumbling. And not only that, but also things, like I said before, concepts that are ingrained into you by society, by the culture, by just life in general, like time. That was one of the biggest fucking things I experienced. Time and language did not fucking make sense to me, because your ego is identified to them because it makes it easier and safer to go throughout the world. When you know about things like time, like numbers, like language, it makes your rational mind more at ease, because okay, like we have some control to this. We know that this means that 3 o'clock means this, that this guy speaking this language means that, by this word means that. It makes you feel safer for your rational mind, for your logical mind, for the masculine mind. But when that starts to dissolve, not only are you trying to grasp, like you're letting go of a rope, it seems like. That's like one of the best ways I can explain it. You holding on to the rope is your ego holding on to control of your experience on life. And when the ego death happens, you're getting butterfingers. The rope you start letting go of that rope, and when you start letting go of that rope, your consciousness starts to descend into what you want to call maybe the abyss, the void, the unknown, the all. It goes into that. And the ego doesn't want to go into the unknown, which is funny because the unknown has ultimate possibilities, ultimate abilities, and options, and just overall different perspectives on life that you cannot tap into if you're always in the known. The known is what's right in front of you, what you've always experienced. Like you can't know if you like this food if you've never tried it. You have to step into the unknown to try it. Same thing with your concept of life. You don't know what you don't know. Let me say that again. You don't know what you don't know, motherfucker. Alright? So when you're letting go of that rope, all your perceptions on life start to fade away. Your perceptions on yourself and the world in general. Time, language. And I remember I was sitting there and I was with a couple friends, and I was like, fuck's sake, bro. Someone was saying, hey bro, we gotta go back, it's almost 3 o'clock. And I was like, god damn it, bro, I don't even know what that means anymore, bro. Like I'm really about to get pulled under, because it doesn't happen like this. At least mine didn't happen like that. It was just slowly, and I just got pulled in to the abyss. And I was like, fuck, man, like 3 o'clock, what does that mean? And you might thinking, like I said before I got into this, I was like, you might think I'm on drugs right now, like 3 o'clock is 3 o'clock. Even right now when I'm saying that, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty simple, 3 o'clock. But it's a man-made concept, it's an egotistical concept that slowly starts to fade away, and it does not make sense to you when you're entering those states of an ego death, an altered state of consciousness. And then when you get fully pulled in, there is no rationalizing any concept. There is no thinking, there is no thoughts, there is no concept of, oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that. There is just an eerie silence and an eerie state of like presence that you get put into. And I've had glimpses of this through deep states of meditation and breath work, and obviously the greatest sages, yogis, the mystics, they do that shit. They can do it on command because they've put in the work, the effort, the practices, the disciplines to do that. They don't need no drugs. They don't need no traumatic experience. They don't need no euphoric experience. They can tap into that state just by themselves, just by the power of the self. That's why self-realization is the ultimate path. You can step into your ultimate state of being by nothing else than just yourself. Where's my dog? Hey. So I've had glimpses of that, but nowhere near what I experienced through the help of psychedelics. That's why I said before on this channel, they are steroids for spiritual growth. They make you taste certain things, taste certain states of consciousness that take a minute to get to, like natural bodybuilding, to build that physique that you always want. It takes a minute to get to, but it just throws you in there really quick, really fast, just like steroids will help you build muscle really quick, really fast, but it does not last. Same thing with these altered states of consciousness, through psychedelics, through anything you can think of that isn't sustainable, because you can't really take psychedelics like that. But it put me in that state to where I was just completely in the void, completely connected to everything. There was no separation with anything. Like the idea of non-dualism is very prevalent with ego death experience. That's how you experience a non-dual state of being, is when your ego, which identifies itself and individualizes itself away from everything, it separates itself away from everything for your survival purposes. It creates a lock between that non-dual state of being. Right now, everything's in duality. Male, female, sun, moon, night, day, inhale, exhale. There's just always two sides to the same coin. But in that ego death experience, in that non-dual state of beingness, there is just one. There's just all. There's no difference between you and the plants, you and the animals, you and other people, you and anything, rocks. There's no separation. There's no 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock that separates the days of, the times of the day. There's none of that. There's just right here, right now, everything is all within you, and everything, and you are everything else around you. Like it's so hard to explain, and the more I've matured past that point, the more I understand like ways to describe it, but still it can't be put into words unless you go out and experience it yourself. I'm not telling you to go take drugs or try doing, like, force an ego death experience to happen, because like I said, it might throw you into a state of psychosis where you can't get yourself out of, bro. Like, I don't think this is like something for everybody. Oh, it's fun, I'm just gonna go have an ego death experience, like I'm going to the beach. Like, it's not like that. It's not like you're taking a vacation. You're ripping your perspective on reality to shreds. Like, it's crazy. And when you're in that non-dual state of being, the only feeling I had was that this felt more like at home and I belonged here than anything I ever felt in my life on the dualistic material plane, on a sober state of experience. Like, that felt like reality more than this felt. This feels more like a dream after that. Like, it's crazy to say it. And I haven't taken DMT yet, but one of my friends who has taken DMT was like, once you get in that experience, which is the ultimate non-dual state, because obviously I've said before, shrooms, the compound of them is very similar to DMT. So if you take a big dose of shrooms and you get to that point, it's essentially like very close to my perspective, even though I haven't taken DMT, it's very close to a breakthrough experience. Obviously, you aren't fully into it, and it can't really compare, but it's close, I would say. Like, if you agree with that, comment down below. But he was saying how after the DMT experience, like, he lived a whole life in that realm, and you might think that that felt like a dream, but he felt 20, 30 years in a matter of 10 minutes off that experience. And he came back to here and he was like, bro, like, I don't know if this is real now. Like, I don't know what is real now, but that felt realer than this. So how is that possible? So that's essentially when you get into those non-dual states of being, what happens to you, what happens to your perspective, what happens to your overall concept of reality. It just shifts for that period of time that you're in there, and it shifts when you're out of it, because your perspective changes, your perspective expands. Right now you were just straightforward, linear, line drive, and now you're able to see clear, like you got a more panoramic view. And when you're fully self-realized, like those masters, like I was saying before, they can put it on command, or they're in that state damn near 24/7, still with the ego part of them. Then you get the full 360 view. That's when you fully self-realize. There, you got everything is all encompassing. Your awareness is all encompassing. It's not just linear. It's not just panoramic. It's all that shit, boy. It's all that shit. So let's talk about something that I'm gonna break down in further detail on the private Patreon community that I'm dropping soon. Again, if you do want to reserve your spot before it goes live, remember, I'm only letting y'all know on this channel as well as a Discord server. If you haven't joined the Discord server, man, that is fucking fraudulent behavior. The link is going to be posted in the pinned comment of this video, so you can hop in the Discord server, DM me, hey man, I want to RSVP my spot into the Patreon before it goes live, or you can DM me on Instagram. Both links, of course, like I said before, are going to be posted in the pinned comment of this video. Let's run it up. But I am going to put this whole video lecture format in a way where you guys can all understand it, of how to cultivate a healthy ego after maybe an ego death experience. Because trying to integrate the ego back into your life after an ego death experience does not make sense if you don't have the proper perspectives and disciplines and ideals in place. And this is one thing that I got from a lot of Vedic texts, especially talking about Lord Shiva, who is quoted to wear his ego, wear his personality like an ornament, like a piece of jewelry. It isn't the entire quote-unquote outfit, but it's just a piece of it. The quote-unquote outfit is the eternal self, but the ego is now the ornament, is now the accessory. But before that, the ego was everything. You didn't have no accessory of the eternal self. Now you're flipping the script. So how you cultivate a healthy ego, even after this spiritual awakening, ego death experience, because another thing that could happen is, in that state of psychosis, not only can you not differentiate between things, but you also develop a spiritual ego. And I'm gonna make another video on this channel talking about how spiritual ego is a real thing, how it's so prevalent in the fucking new age spirituality shit that I wholeheartedly think is some nonsensical bullshit that I've talked about before on this channel, that I've talked about before on the main channel, talking about how new age spirituality is a scam, about how chosen ones is, the whole idea is bullshit. Like, you might develop a spiritual ego, and the spiritual ego, what that does is, like I said before, create another false sense of self and false sense of individuality, that I'm a chosen one now because I had an ego death experience, or I'm a chosen one now because I took a little bit of shrooms and had a spiritual awakening experience. I'm the part of the awakened ones. And dude, shut the fuck up. I hate, like, I don't have hate in my heart, but I think this stuff is so detrimental to people's spiritual development, and it's so prevalent, and it's so widespread, and it's such a popular thing. Like, when you go look up spirituality on YouTube or anything like that, that's gonna be the #1 things that show up. It's not gonna be channels like this, or channels like my main channel, or other channels that talk about actual spiritual concepts that give you perspectives on life that not only get you in a state where you can cultivate a healthy ego, but actually direct you towards truth seeking, which comes with the humility that you don't know shit even after your spiritual awakening. These people, the New Age people, they have a spiritual awakening, they have an ego death experience, they think they're a chosen one, they think they have all the knowledge, they don't need no books, they don't need nothing, they just think that they are manifesting their life and they're fucking law of attraction guru. Like, dude, it's so bullshit, man. Like, that you need to get back into the ancient fucking knowledge, the ancient mysticism, if you're actually serious about spiritual development. There's so many different pathways to that, whether it's Christian mysticism, whether it's Vedic mysticism, whether that's Islamic mysticism, whether that's more of a non-dualistic Taoist mysticism. Like, those are the real paths. It's not, oh, I'm gonna make my own thing. Like, yeah, of course you can take things from different paths and put it up into your own system, but it's not like, oh, I'm God now, I get to choose the rules. Like, bro, like I said before in that video talking about spiritual awakenings and self-realization, you're at ground zero, bro. You just got into the game. There's some Hall of Famers out there dropping y'all some sauce. Go get up on some game and stop being a fucking lame and thinking that you know everything about this entire fucking frame. Come on, man, come on. So, what I was saying is, cultivating a healthy ego, that comes with proper practices that come with these mystic paths. They teach you all these types of things through stories, through allegories, through metaphors, through these symbols, like. And I'm trying to package it in a way, obviously, in that video on the Patreon, in a way that you can understand it without having to go to that book. I can break that bitch down real quick like a brick for y'all and serve it on a platter to where you can just eat up on game. So, off the dome, the best way I can explain the concepts in there, obviously I'm going to put it in a way more structured format, long form on the Patreon. But right now, since we're off the dome, we're out here in the field, in the flesh, dropping out that game so you guys can make these gains. Let's just spin it off the best way I can, which is the fact that cultivating an ego is, a healthy ego is, number one, through detaching from it, through not identifying with it. You have an ego, you understand you have an ego, you're not trying to kill the ego, because ego is not the enemy. I talked about this before on the main channel, what my ego death experience taught me. Very short video if you want to check it out after this. It's the concept of ego is not the enemy. You see some of these books, like from New Age people about philosophy, how ego is the enemy. It's not the enemy. It's identification with it that's holding you back. If you can use your ego, like I said, like Lord Shiva, like an ornament, like a piece of jewelry, it will only enhance your life because you're not identifying with it. You understand that you are not the ego. When the ego is the enemy is when you think that you are the ego, when the ego is the only thing. But when you have a sense of eternal self, eternal awareness, you can use the ego as a little piece to your overall puzzle that helps you essentially build up your eternal personality, not your physical personality, not your mental personality, but more of your spiritual personality, and which is the fact that you are the observer of the mind, of the body, of the soul, and you are connected to the all. You're a piece of the all. So with that perspective, with that understanding, you can go throughout life not being so attached to a lot of things, which I'm going to be talking about, honestly, on the Patreon and on this channel a little bit too. The law of detachment, which I talked about before on the main channel as well. By being able to detach and not identify yourself with the ego, you're going to be able to not only embody your highest self, embody your ultimate self, embody the self, not just yours, because nothing is yours. Everything is impermanent. You are one in everything, and everything is in one. That makes sense. All is one is all. That's the better way to put it. when you have that perspective through the ego death experience and you're integrating practices and lessons and teachings to actually kind of ingrain it into your existence, not just one crazy fucking experience all at once that you don't know what happened and you're fried out. When you actually start to integrate all these things and put it into the overall life and you're detached and the ego is not dictating everything, you get to use it when it's needed. You get to use it as a tool. You can put on the chain, you can put on the piece of jewelry, you can put on the ornament when it's time to use it. And it's not gonna take over the entire outfit. It's not gonna take over the entire perspective on the world. When you need to get into those egotistical states, when is that? Maybe you're competing in a sport. Maybe you're competing in business. Maybe you're in a life or death situation and you need the ego to snap in control. Let's say a fucking bus is coming at you and you just stand there like, oh, I'm one with the bus. There's no separation. And you just get run the fuck over because you're in ego death mode. That would fucking suck, right? So that's why you gotta have the ego it's always there. It's always tucked under the hood. It's a accessory. It's a weapon, maybe even, bro. Like it's something there where you gotta use it when it's needed. When you don't want to use the ego, it's like, okay, let's say you're talking to somebody. You're in a deep conversation with somebody. The ego wants to butt in and wants to put its own input when someone's actually trying to just give you all their details of what's going on in their life. The ego wants to butt in, oh yeah, that's happened to me before. No one gives a fuck what happened to you when people are actually trying to get your advice. Instead, the ego can stay in the background, you keep it tucked, you don't let it go ballistic, and you listen to the person in a non-dual state and you understand their pain or their suffering or their happiness or their all these types of things. You feel it in yourself because you understand that they are not separated from you. They experience the same things, you've experienced that too, and you can put yourself in their shoes and you can better cultivate relationships, you can better cultivate understandings with people, understandings with not just even people, but like animals or like plants or this or that. Like you understand things on a deeper level when the ego is not involved because you're not separating yourself. You're not putting yourself in a state of dualism where it's me and this person. Like if some people, you might have experienced this, I experienced this, like I'm not a saint, I'm not a fucking perfect person. If somebody's doing well, let's say, and you're trying to do the same thing, and they come up to you and they're saying, oh man, I did this, I did that, I just made my first $10,000 a month, I just got onto this basketball team, I just got 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, I just got into this school, I just got into this opportunity, got this job, I'm making this amount. Like, you get jealous. That is the ego getting jealous. That is the ego feeling it as a threat. Okay, this person, because it's a survival instinct, it's evolutionary. Back then, if somebody's doing better than you and they're saying, okay, I got more food than you, he's gonna survive, you're not. Like, we're not in that position, obviously, right now, in the modern days, but it's the same trigger reaction. You get jealous and you're like, the ego just wants to put people down. They want to butt in and it wants to like just say, well, what about me? Like, no one gives a fuck. Be happy for other people. Feel that their excitement, feel their happiness, feel their joy. Like, you're gonna feel it too. There's too much shit in the world where you can't share experiences, but when you put yourself in that lower negative vibration through the ego taking control, it's just gonna make everything like it feel like you're you versus the world, when in reality you are the world. You are all of it in that non-dual state. That's what an ego death will help you realize afterwards if you do the proper things and you cultivate a healthy ego. You don't want to kill the ego completely, like I said before, because you're not going to be able to operate in this world unless you're ready to go full monk mode, just meditate all day and go into states of samadhi, and you're straight up essentially dissolving to the spiritual realm. Like, maybe later on in life, that's all you want to do. That's cool. Kill the ego, rip it to shreds, be in that state all the time. But if you actually practice things like meditation, breath work, which I will be putting more onto that Patreon. Obviously, I have one for sexual transmutation on the ebook. If you're practicing semen retention, which I most likely guess that you are, which I most likely, hopefully, you got the book, you watched the guide, you've tapped into the audio series all on the main channel, got everything there. If you're doing stuff like breathwork, meditation, it gives you it's like working on that muscle of relaxing the ego. It's tight. It feels like a muscle that's tight. It feels like you're almost stretching and letting loose that muscle of the ego through these types of practices. And you do it daily instead of frying yourself out on shrooms or psychedelics or having traumatic experiences that like fully lets go of the ego, but it's not sustainable. You got to do things that are sustainable, and eventually you develop yourself into the point where you improve on it, where you don't need, like I said, those types of crazy experiences to enter those altered states of consciousness. You can just do it on command through breath work, through meditation, through all these types of things that actually will allow you to be in those states and tap in and out of them seamlessly. Because you don't want to be the person where they go into states of meditation where you get that ego death experience and then you get in another state of psychosis and you don't know what's going on. You want to be the person that can actually integrate all these types of things into their lives in a healthy, sustainable manner. So all in all, man, that is what an ego death experience really feels like. And that is what you should do if you had an ego death experience and you're trying to piece up the puzzle together. You got to understand that ego is not the enemy. You got to understand that you can use it as an ornament, as a piece of jewelry, as an accessory to enhance and advance your life. Use it to your advantage, but you got to do that through proper practices, proper disciplines, proper knowledge, proper gnosis, only knowledge that can be found within, to put it into motion. Because without the ego, you're gonna be fucked, and with only the ego, you're gonna be fucked. You're gonna have to have a nice balance, a nice yin and yang between the ego and the eternal self while you operate on this plane. A lot of people on this plane, on this existence, on this reality, are only in ego mode. And a lot of people, I guess, only in the spiritual plane. I don't know people in there. I can't see them, but they're all in the non-dual plane. Right now, I believe Earth is a state of duality where you gotta learn how to be more non-dual, because the natural state is duality, is separation, is individualization. So you don't need more ego. If you completely have an ego death, the ego is still gonna be there, but you can't try to kill it more and more and more. You leave it there, but now you've detached from it. Now you've unidentified yourself with it, so you have the perspective to use it properly in the right situations. So hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down, man, because I'm out here in the field, in the flesh, dropping all that game so you guys can make these games, and I'm out here. Peace.